Okay, looks like we are ready for the final quarter of the meeting. This is where it's really getting interesting now, because this is the spot in the meeting, the place in the meeting where we try to collect all the information that we have heard about and all the thoughts that we had in the build-up and during the meeting, and try to come up with a product. And the one that we are focusing on today is that briefing paper that is mentioned in the background materials. And so we have already touched upon some of the issues that are related to that in terms of what people who are organizing the Science Ministerial are expecting, and how it will be sort of fed into the process. But the main part of this process this afternoon will be to break into 3 working groups that will be chaired by Brenda, Leif, and the third one by Vera and Mary Beth. But before going into that, I just wanted to show a short a set of thoughts that are captured in a little PowerPoint, and I guess this is up here. So just to make sure that everybody recalls what the foci of the Science Ministerial are, there are Arctic science challenges and their regional global implications. We have talked quite a bit about that. There is strengthening and integrating Arctic observations and data sharing. We haven't talked too much about that, but implicitly it was there throughout the presentations, and we have seen that that some of the time series are too short, especially for interdecadal investigations and things like that. So we have touched upon it. Applying expanded scientific understanding of the Arctic to build regional resilience and shape global responses. Now that's quite a mouthful here, but what, for example, falls underneath that is the adaptation capacity and things like how to implement adaptation strategies. And when we were talking about Shishmaref and things like that, communities that might have to be relocated, I think all of that will be captured or can be captured in this one. And then there is Arctic science as vehicle for STEM education and citizen empowerment. And that's, we touched a bit on the educational side, but clearly there is quite a bit of room to expand on that. So it clearly has to be high level for that purpose, short and concise. I think we have to start in with a short intro or statement that captures where we think the Arctic is standing, and sort of setting the stage also in terms of where the deficiencies in our knowledge are, and that sort of should come across, I think, right away. Of course, we have to address the foci of the Arctic Science Ministerial, and I will get back to that. I think we should find a balance in the focus on local, regional versus global issues. I think it would be good, and I heard that around the meeting several times, to use concrete examples throughout the paper where possible, in sort of as short nuggets, to make it easier to relate to what we are saying, so that it's not too abstract. Of course, the language has to resonate with the participants at the Arctic Science Ministerial, and there we can get hopefully some more guidance of those who are talking to these people on a more regular basis. What level of depth in terms of the science we have to target. And of course there is opportunity to add other important topics to the foci that have been pointed out by the Arctic Science Ministerial. So this is just, as I said, these are a few points to help the discussion to be started, and the working groups then should, feel free to add, subtract, come up with their own ideas on how to do that, and then we will have a report back from all the working groups and try to extract commonalities and things that are more divergent, and identify a process how to bring all that together. In terms of some possible topics, I just put a few of them up, and we can leave that up here at the end of this short intro here. The working group chairs also have a document that has these points. And so what came to mind is adaptation to Arctic change. That is something clearly the system is already adapting. There is not that much focus on adaptation science and adaptation implementation or adaptive action implementation. So that would be one possible thing. I think a unified Arctic voice for global action. We have heard yesterday that if we want to really change the trajectory, temperature trajectory, everything that's coupled to that in the Arctic, it has to be driven through a global action. Regional interventions are not probably, might not even be possible, but if, at best are very difficult. We I do feel we need enhanced national and international efforts in understanding and projecting Arctic futures and their impacts, so that we are, these are the questions that, for example, Rafe asked, where is the Greenland ice sheet heading, where's the permafrost heading, where are other parts like the sea ice cover. Some of that is already there, and we have heard that we might have enough information on some of these issues so that we don't have to put too much into it, but this is something we should think through and should come up with some statement on and recommendation on what we feel is needed there. Definitely quite a bit of synthesis is probably needed. Then the Arctic observations, we have heard several times that this is something that is, there is an observing system emerging, but it's still fairly fragmented. There are national pieces that are not coordinated on the international level. There are time series that have been stopped. There are time series that should have been started and never were. So this is something that needs national and international coordination and resourcing. And then the next 2 points are actually relating to some of the above, because in defining some of that, we still have to figure out what is the state of the Arctic we should aim for, and which states are actually still possible, because some of them we already closed off based on past actions. And what means do we have to shape the trajectory of the Arctic system, which sort of goes back towards the unified global action. So as you are going through these in the working groups, you can combine some of those. As I said, you can add some, and it's really up to you to give input to the group as a whole, where you feel this should go and what kind of material you think should be included. I think this was double. I think that's actually all in terms of the suggestions for possible topics. So what we can do is we can have some, exchange here if there are immediate questions with respect to the process, with respect to some of the things that I have put up here, and then we will simply count through 1, 2, 3, so that we get 3 working groups. We unfortunately only have this space, so we will have one table here in the front, in the back corner, and in the other back corner of the room. I think the room is big enough that we should be able to manage without having too much noise interference. So are there any immediate questions or reactions to the process, to some of the topics that I have put up there, some of the the points that are meant to really meant to start a discussion rather than being prescriptive?
Keep that up there.
We will leave that up. Yeah.
Can you switch back once to the...
Can you use the mic?
Can you switch back once to the previous slide, to the one on which defines the themes? Yeah.
Oh, this one?
The 4 themes, yeah, or Foci, yeah.
Was that the one you're looking for?
Yeah. I have one question. I mean, given the discussions we had yesterday and to a large extent today, a lot was dealing with climate policy or global climate policy even. I don't really find this in one of those 4 points, at least not clearly. It's more addressing, you know, Arctic science challenges and building resilience. I wonder if but it appears, this question appears in your later slide where it says a unified Arctic voice for global action. So the question is, should we address this as a separate point, which is not related necessarily to the one of the 4 foci, or is it something we could try to put into the four foci? But that's probably not a good idea because then it's too hidden. It should be rather prominent, I guess.
I think Rafe wants to talk to that.
Respond to that insight. I had the same conversation with the people who are organizing this at the White House. And at one point, one of them said, well, if you look at the first topic, you can fit a lot under that, particularly if you use the word science instead of policy. I mean, I actually believe we should say what we think and submit what we think and worry less about how, if it fits appropriately. Much more important if we have original thoughts, important thoughts, to submit them to the process. I'm not sure whether they're willing to address the fundamental questions in the ministerial itself, but that's almost secondary to getting the important questions on the table that we can do. Because the ministerial is a closed meeting. Closer, I thought it was, okay. Closer, sorry. So I think trying to rely on their response is difficult, which I don't think should inhibit what we submit.
Stephanie?
So so I think Rafe's exactly right. I don't think that they're going to be, these were kind of ideas and framing to just get some things on the table and get some ideas together. But for example, Martin said something about, Jeffrey said something about, well, there might be, for example, a cross-cutting session or focus on sea ice, right? So where does sea ice fit? Well, in everything there, you know. So I don't think we have to be too worried about this, the way that this is set up here. I think, as Rafe said, we should just be saying what we want, and then they could figure out how it goes into it.
Yep.
Just real quickly, I agree with those 2 points. When and I haven't had as much discussions with the White House as the 2 previous speakers, but when we've talked to them about it, number 3 is also a place where they've said that part of the agenda links up with kind of the post-Paris agenda as it relates to that last part on shaping global responses. So I think in general there's room, I would say, for us to bring our full agenda in under those topics.
And if I could just add one more thing, if you read the subtext on each of these, it actually is a broader scope and a somewhat different scope than you might think. For example, number 2, yeah, exactly. So number 2, look at how far, you know, what it talks about. So it's the monitoring within the Arctic, and it also talks, as we said, increasing integration of indigenous people's knowledge and integrating global observing systems, you know, so a lot of these are much broader than they seem just based on the short sentence.
While you are collecting your thoughts, just one point, because several of you asked me, how will that thing be fed into the Science Ministerial? Will it be a national or an international, or, you know, who will stand behind that document? And I think the thought is to come up with a draft here, work that out after the meeting, and then offer everybody here who attended the meeting to sign it. That would sort of bring a joint voice, academic, non-academic, national, international. So I don't consider that a US document, although it might find its way to the Science Ministerial through a US pathway. But clearly it is intended to be the representative voice of those of this who attended this workshop as one diversified group of people who want to provide input. Leif?
Adding to that, isn't this text here, that's drawn by the US people, isn't it?
That is, yeah, that's from the White House webpage.
Yeah. So maybe that's sort of the US perspective of this. So I think we should be very open to add other stuff that is as a more general
exactly,
international
yeah.
aspect.
And that's why, you know, I try to say, you know, add other topics that you consider as important based on the discussions that we have and based on the discussions that you will have in the working group. Scott?
I'm just wondering, what are the specific expectations for the deliverables from the working groups? Are we going to be having a recorder who takes notes and then discusses them in a formal discussion at the end? I see that's in the agenda, so I was just wondering how we're going to go about that.
So in terms of the operational aspects, there is somebody who is chairing the group, and then this person can ask for somebody to be the rapporteur. That would be a formal way to bring it back to the plenary here that we have later on, and also would leave some notes behind that will be collected here and will be used by the core writing group that will put out the first draft. And then there was somebody back there. Was no? Any other questions, comments? Guess everybody is ready to go into the working group. We are a little bit ahead of time, which is good because we could have either a longer break or end earlier. So let's just start over here, counting through 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So Doug, if you, yeah. Brenda, okay. Then the next table.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Ohio. 3. Greg, who is counting back there?
1.
Okay, good. Michael. 2. Yeah. We have 3 with Franz, and then who is sitting there in between? Just see somebody nodding. So Mary Beth, is that 1? Okay, let's move to the table.
1.
Okay.
2. 3. 1, 2.
So did we miss 2 here, or did I? You have it. Okay, good. So 1 is over here, 2 in the back corner, and 3 in the left back corner. And Leif, if you take number 1, Brenda number 2, and Vera and Mary Beth number 3.